Now to Chapter 28, the aorist or undefined adverbial participle. Chapter 27, we looked at the present. Chapter 26, we introduced participles. So now we are on our way, and as I've noted in the previous couple of chapters, participles are essential for translation and exegesis. Let's review. What are participles? They're verbal adjectives. So they are built on a verb, and they end with noun adjectival endings. They're formed with a particular tense stem, present, aorist, or perfect, that we'll be looking at here in Mounce, and they have voice, active, middle, and passive. They have an adjectival function, and they modify nouns. So they agree in case, number, and gender with the noun they modify. Now, as we noted in Chapter 27 with the continuous or present participle, participles can modify verbs, so they function adverbially, in which case they're anarthrous, they do not have a definite article, or they can function adjectively as attributive or substantival adjectives, and here they may or may not have a definite article. And the meaning is only slightly nuanced with that, and we will come to that here in Chapter 29. Chapter 30 will cover the perfect participle. Well, the first aorist then. The first aorist undefined participle. Here's the constituent element formation of the participle. Unaugmented first aorist stem. It's unaugmented, so we've relied on that augment with verbs to know that it's an aorist. How are we going to know that it's an aorist participle? Well, we have that tense formative, so the sigma alpha together. Whenever you see sigma alpha, be thinking first aorist, active or middle, and if you see theta eta or with a participle theta epsilon, be thinking first aorist passive. So that establishes first aorist. How are we going to know it's a participle? Well, the participle morpheme. Nu-tau, meno, or nu-tau in the active, middle, passive, respectively. So here's another chart that can help you to see the constituent elements of first aorist participles. Notice the first column there, the masculine active first aorist participle, saw plus nu-tau. Middle, saw plus meno. Passive, the theta eta actually becomes theta epsilon in the participle plus nu-tau, so thent. And at times that nuances, but for now just know the paradigm. Feminine, first declension endings, active, middle, and passive. Neuter, third declension in the active and passive, second in the middle. And you see the pattern there. Here's our noun case endings chart again. We have the third declension for masculine and neuter, second declension masculine, neuter, and feminine in the first declension there. And this is produced from Mounce, page 83. As I've stated before, it may be helpful to have this memorized or be very familiar with it, and color coding it can help. Placing the masculine endings in black, for instance, feminine in red, neuter in blue, something like that. If you have a whole chart, can help you to remember, or some kind of a chant or mnemonic device, and we'll get to some of those with the participle here in a few moments. I have the paradigm of me again. This paradigm has basically the participle morpheme with those noun case endings, and if you have this paradigm memorized, you can see the pattern of third and first declension noun endings right here in this participle. Well, let's think about the first aorist active participle again. Then we have the sigma alpha and the nu-tau, lusantis. And here then is the first aorist participle full paradigm. Similar to what we've seen in the past, sigma forces the new tau to drop in the nominative singular. And notice the pattern for nominative singular accusative, nominative and accusative singular neuter are the same, and nominative accusative neuter plural are the same. Genitive, dative, masculine and singular and plural, and as is the case with all third declension endings, the masculine accusative plural is identical to the nominative neuter plural. How are we going to know what is what? Again, context is going to help us to determine what the subject of the participle is. And by that, we will know if it is masculine or neuter. Again, the noun case ending chart. I continue to have this in multiple places in these slides so that you can be familiar with it. And once you have the patterns down, it will go much more easily for you. Formation of the first aorist middle. It uses again the second declension, first declension, second declension pattern in masculine, feminine to neuter. Sigma alpha tense formative and the participle morpheme, meno. So the full paradigm, here's how it's formed. Notice as you look across the paradigm and down each column, sigma alpha, sigma alpha, sigma alpha, all the way through. See sigma alpha, you know it's aorist. Meno or mene, immediately you know it's a middle participle. From there, if you know your master case ending chart, then you can identify, is this nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, singular or plural? And you have it. I want to pause for just a moment as you look at these various cells here in the paradigm. 2 or 3 thoughts. First, notice how long participles are. By letter count, they are longer than verbs, and sometimes they're the longest word in a sentence. Immediately, that helps you to know that you have a participle. Longer words are participles. Second, as we go to the first aorist passive participle, sometimes it's the case that students, when we encounter participles, we're overwhelmed because there are so many parts. There's a tense stem, a tense formative, a morpheme, case ending, all this information coming together, and that can be confusing. Let's turn that around for a minute. I want you to think about participles and all of the parts of participles not as challenging, but as hooks for you to know what a word is. The analogy that helps here is someone who's traveling at a large airport and they're at baggage claim, and perhaps they've put a pink ribbon or a purple ribbon or a green piece of neon tape on their bag or what have you, so they can identify their bag while 100 other bags are coming off of the plane. Well, in the same way, participles provide us many identification markers. They are hooks by which we can grab that word and parse it. And so we have sigma alpha in the first aorist tense formative, and then we in the active and middle, and then in the passive, the for participles. Theta, eta for verbs. And then the new tau in the active, and meno in the middle, and again passive new tau. And so here is the full paradigm for the first aorist passive participle. New tau drops out again in the nominative singular and masculine and neuter. Otherwise, and the compensatory lengthening a bit, otherwise things are very regular here in nominative accusative neuter singular, nominative accusative neuter plural. And you can see theta epsilon across each column and row. If you see that, and then especially if you see the new tau following it, or theta epsilon followed by iota and a sigma, you know this is a participle. And you can parse it from there. Well, let's think about the second aorist participle for a moment. At times this can be a bit confusing, but once again, we are helped by all of the parts. These are hooks, these are identification markers. Here we have again the unaugmented tense stem, this time second aorist. No tense formative. Remember, the first aorist has sigma alpha or theta eta as a tense formative, but there isn't one with the second aorist. So these participles, second aorist compared with first aorist, are they longer or shorter? Well, generally they'd be shorter because they don't have that tense formative. So therefore they have a connecting vowel, still have the same participle morpheme pattern, nu tau, meno, nu tau, and the noun case endings. Mounce notes that at times the second aorist participle can look a bit like the present because there's no augment. The tense stems might be similar. Well, how can we know the difference? Well, the stems of second aorist participles often will end in a dental or a velar. Might have a certain pattern that we could identify, and generally in comparison with the present, the second aorist stems that end in a stop, number 1 and 2 here, they do not add the extra letters that the present does. So the second aorist participle by letter count is going to be the shortest of the participles that we learn. First aorist are going to be some of the longest. Perfect, we'll get to in a couple of chapters, they're perhaps the longest, generally speaking. But second aorist, they don't add the idzo, odzo for a dental or the double sigma for the velar, and they don't have the double consonant pattern. If you look at number 4, the balone present participle, the second aorist is just balone. And here is the formation of the second aorist active participle in the full paradigm. 3-1-3 in the active, just as the other participles that we've looked at, the present and the first aorist. So you can see how the second aorist participle is shorter, and how would we know it's not a present? Well, in this case, just the single lambda. Second aorist middle participle, same idea. What distinguishes here the second aorist from the first aorist middle participle? It's the sigma alpha, right? No sigma alpha here, so no tense formative. If we know it's not a tense formative, and genomenos is the second aorist tense, it's gen, the second aorist root and stem, as opposed to genomai, gamma, iota, nu in the present. So we can distinguish each of these participles by tense stem, if they have a tense formative or not, the participle morpheme, and then the noun case endings. Here's our master participle chart. And Mounce suggests 6 memory forms: the masculine, feminine neuter, nominative, and genitive singular all the way across. And this helps us to have the pattern in mind. Remember, with translation and exegesis, various options start with temporal, causal, purpose. The temporal, with the aorist, we translate those after and then the verb. So the action of the participle we think of as preceding that of the verb. But the other steps of the translation exegesis ladder would follow. Vocab starter, again, be creative. Aspazomai, aspaz, I greet. Grammateos, grammar, ascribe. And this is our pattern.